Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. So for here in Canada, this is our Thanksgiving weekend. Monday will be our Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving. And uh, and so I find a lot of these holidays, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, even though, they're not a Buddhist holiday, they can be a secular holiday, or they can be, a holiday from another religion. I think a lot of times there is a lot of good Dhamma that can be found in these holidays and a good basis to them and a really good place for us to reflect and start bringing up Dhamma themes. So, so Thanksgiving, of course, is a holiday that is, as far as I understand, is a harvest festival, celebrating a successful harvest. And it's a time of, giving thanks. And the tradition is this is a time to give thanks. So I know nowadays, it's maybe changed quite a bit. It might be a holiday more focused on getting together a family, eating a lot of turkey, or just eating a lot, or say next month when it's American Thanksgiving. I know that from what I understand, there's a lot of eating, drinking beer, watching football, and then of course the day afterwards, everyone going absolutely bonkers shopping, and so so but but we can always bring it back to and use this as a time to bring up these Dhamma reflections, and so you know these qualities of gratitude on Thanksgiving, being thankful and bringing up gratitude to everything we have in our lives. So with monks, gratitude is just something which is so intrinsically part of our lifestyle, the way we live, because we don't work jobs, we don't grow crops, we live so completely dependent on the generosity of other people that, there's always this gratitude, and this really having gratitude towards all these people who have done so much for us and so much to support us. And I've spoken a lot even lately about gratitude, and it's a really great quality. But one of the other things, and I think I'll talk about a bit more tonight with Thanksgiving, is in the traditional way for a Thanksgiving holiday, we're being thankful and giving thanks for not necessarily for other people and things other people have done, but a lot of times for these maybe a little more abstract things. So for example, being a harvest festival, it was giving thanks for a good harvest, or people will be thankful for having enough to eat, thankful for having a certain amount of prosperity in their lives, a certain amount of success in their lives that way. And this is something that we can actively reflect on, that in our lives right now, and we can reflect on this, that we do have enough, we do have materially enough to survive, enough to be comfortable enough that we're even able to come here this evening, and that we are able to practice Dhamma and have that ability to bring Dhamma into our lives. So when I was a junior monk, one of the senior monks was coming to visit us. One of the senior Western monks came to visit Wat Pah Nanachat, and he was talking about um, this one rains retreat he had spent in a very underdeveloped country. So this had been years beforehand. I'm not even sure what year it was. It must be probably at least 25 years ago, if not more, in a very, very underdeveloped country. And it was a very poor country. And so he had been invited to stay at this little vihara in this country. And the monk who normally lived there was gone. And where he was living was, quite a nice place. It was well supported by, a community of expats, people who were doing well materially. But he was talking about when he was outside of this vihara and some of the incredible poverty he saw in this country. And he was seeing that, these people were struggling so hard just to get enough to eat, struggling so hard to survive. And he was saying that these people they didn't have the chance to think about Dhamma. They couldn't have the chance to really reflect on that, or not even only to practice Dhamma or learn Dhamma, but just to even have that opportunity to think about it, because survival was so tough for them. And so for people like us, where we do have enough, and we do have this material prosperity, is something we can reflect on. And another thing, that we traditionally reflect on at Thanksgiving is good health. People like giving uh, thanks for having good health. And again, it's another thing we can reflect on is that, we do have good health right now. We've all got something. So no one's got perfect health. We've all got something. And especially, as we start getting older, we get more and more of those things, the aches and pains, or we have maybe some kind of illness we're dealing with. But generally, most of us do have um, health, which is okay enough um, to practice Dhamma, to practice meditation, to, really work on improving ourselves and improving our lives. And when we reflect on these things, that right now we do have uh, good health, we do have a circumstances in our lives where we're able to practice Dhamma, we can really reflect on these and use these as a way to develop something called Samvega. Or so this is this like urgency, this like spiritual urgency to practice. So, when we look at this and we remember this, that we do have the circumstances right now we can practice. This can encourage us on to practice, give us an urgency in practice, because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow anything could happen. But right now, things are okay. So a lot of times in life, a lot of us do have that tendency towards procrastination. We have that tendency towards, I'll do it tomorrow, or, always thinking there will be a tomorrow, or always thinking there will be time tomorrow. So there's so many times in life that, oh, I'll do this project tomorrow, or I'll start it in a week, or I'll go on that diet tomorrow, or I'll start that in a week, or go back, start exercising, go to the gym. And, we never end up doing those things. Or, you'll even see that in the monastery. I've met monks before who we have this chanting thing called the Patimokkha, which is the monks' rules. And it's a very large chant that we learn. Not everyone learns it, but most of us do end up learning it, and we memorize it, and it takes about 45 minutes to chant very quickly. So it's quite a large thing. It can take months and months to learn, and you once in a while you'll get this a monk who's always been planning on learning this, and they're always going to start it. Next rains retreat, they'll start it, or once they'll finish this, then they'll start it. And they never do. And because it's just that mind's tendency to procrastinate. And so for us on a day like this, we can bring these things up. We can actively, reflect on these. Okay, I can practice right now, and it encourages us on to practice, because like I was saying, we never know what's going to happen next. Anything can happen. We can come down with a strong illness, a very powerful illness. We could have that accident. We always think it's never going to happen to us. When it's always going to be to someone else. And then when it does happen to us, it's always a surprise. So I remember when I was a novice, I was in my early 20s, and I found out that my grandpa was diagnosed with cancer, I remember just being, really, really upset, really bothered by this. And I was just thinking, oh, this shouldn't happen. He's quite old. He's in his mid 80s. He's lived a hard life. He's made it through all these hardships. And I'm thinking, well, it shouldn't be like this. He should, it should be an easy, really, really nice last part of his life. That last phase of his life should be really nice. This shouldn't happen. But then I was thinking, more, and it was like, but this always does end up happening. This this happens to everybody or most people, and but a lot of times we just don't expect it, or when something happens to us, we just don't expect it. And so right now when we do have these opportunities to practice, to really take advantage of them. So again, and because, even right now in our lives, we do have this experience of dukkha, of suffering in our lives right now. So, you think about it, why, if I'm experiencing suffering right now, why wait before I put an end to it? Why wait before uh, I do something about it? Like if I'm suffering right now, why say, okay, I'll just, I'll suffer an extra week and then I'll maybe start reducing my suffering next week. So this week will be my week of suffering, we don't need to do that. So we can just, uh, reflect right now and try to put an end to it right now. And but again, when we do when things do end up happening, when these illnesses end up happening, when something bad happens, a lot of times we also take it very personally. We feel like um, this is some kind of personal attack to me, or something which has personally happened bad to me. And the why me? Why is this happening to me? And one thinking that way, creates more suffering on it. But these are just, universal experiences that, everyone goes through. So there was this story in the suttas and of this lady, and her child died. And it was really, really devastating to her. And she had a bit of like a breakdown, it sounds like. And so she was taking her child's body around to all the different like healers and holy men and religious figures around to see if one of them can cure her kid and bring her kid back to life. And she ended up finally going to see the Buddha and wanted the Buddha to bring her kid back to life. And the Buddha said, okay, but to do it, I need you to get me some mustard seeds from a house that has never known death. So she goes around to all the different houses in the village, asking them for if they've ever known death. And then, every house, of course, has known death. And she was able to understand this. She had enough, even though she was going through such a hard time, she had enough, innate wisdom or enough developed spiritual qualities that she understood that the teaching the Buddha was giving her, that, death is, this universal thing. And so she was able to let go of this, let go of her child. And there was no magic cure made from mustard seeds, right? But it was a teaching, it was a wisdom teaching for her. The Buddha understood that she would understand this. Um, or Lumpur Sumedho, he's the most senior Western monk in the Ajahn Chah tradition, and it's one of my favorite teachings from him. And he was saying that, sometimes he'll get people come to see him and, say, I have this friend and she's such a good person, she's just like the best person there is, but all this bad stuff keeps happening to her, this and this and this. And why is all this, even though she's a good person, why is all this bad stuff happening to her? And Lumpur Sumedho was saying that a lot of people, when they come, and ask questions like this, that they're looking for some kind of like uh, answer, like, oh, well, this is happening to her because in her past life did this and this, and trying to look for that type of a cause to it. But Lumpur Sumedho would just give the answer, it's happening because they were born. And so that a lot of these things are just, part of the universal experience of being born, being human, and so that we all go through them. but a lot of times we do take them very, very personally. So the Buddha gave this one simile of, like being shot with an arrow. So when you're having this type of physical suffering, it's like being shot with an arrow. But when you start like proliferating around it and thinking, that why me, all that kind of stuff, it's like being shot with a second arrow. So you have the first arrow of the physical pain, and the second arrow, all this mental pain that we've created around it. And again, it's just something a lot of us do. And so again, on a day like today, it's nice to be able to use whatever, holiday it is, to be able to turn it around and, reflect on Dhamma and bring some Dhamma into it, bring some Dhamma into the day, and turn it into something that can be quite useful. And so, this is one of those things, we try to do, is try to actively bring things up, actively see these different situations in life, these different, it can be a day like a holiday, or different situations in our lives as, a teaching and as an opportunity to practice Dhamma. And if we can do that, if we can really see all these different experiences in life as an opportunity to practice, then our practice is going to develop very quickly. We're going to really be able to develop and move ahead and reduce our suffering very quickly. But a lot of times it's very difficult. So even though, even though we hear it again and again, when you're in that situation in life, say, for example, you're at work and you're having, a disagreement with a coworker, or someone says something or does something that offends you, they cut you off in practice, and you can feel that, like, emotion coming up, that mind state coming up. And then you start going, oh, that person, he did this and this and this. And you lose it into that and just get carried away with it. But if you can stop and say, oh, what's happening here? Oh, look, this is anger. This is frustration. How does this feel? Why am I feeling like this? What attachments do I have? What's causing this? Or and then actively looking at it as an opportunity to let go of these emotions, to remove these, and then you'll be able to move along very quickly. But again, it can be quite quite hard, and just takes some practice. And sometimes, having little reminders to ourselves to bring up that mindfulness, bring up that wisdom. So there was this famous Vietnamese Zen teacher in in the West. He lived in France, and his name was Thich Nhat Hanh. Most people know him. He's quite famous. And in his tradition, they would do these little things they'd call bells of mindfulness. So they'd really set up different things which would happen in the day, which they'd use as a way to remind them to bring up that mindfulness. So as far as I understand, one of the things they did was they had, like the grandfather clocks there, which chimed every 15 minutes. And so when the clock would chime, they'd stop and, establish mindfulness and then move on with the day. They also said, with the telephone, when the phone would ring, they'd stop, establish their mindfulness and then answer the phone. But I think that can also nowadays, probably people would have hung up already before you got the chance to go and answer it if you hear the phone call. So but just being able to have these little things in our lives to remember and to remind us to bring it back. Like we had this one senior monk, and he was telling us once that one of the things he'd do is he'd set his shoes uh, when he because so in the forest monasteries, because everything's spread out, so we've got all these little huts we live in. We've got our meditation hall over here, we've got this building over here, and we always remove our footwear before we go in. One of the reasons we wear flip-flops, so it's very easy to just uh, take them off and put them on easily. And he would set his sandals in a very particular way. And he said that would, when he did that and when he'd see that, it would really, work for him to bring up mindfulness and bring him back into the present moment. And so So I'd like to encourage everyone to, try to find a few of these little things to remind us and be able to bring up that mindfulness and be able to stop and not get carried away with these situations and be able to stand back and and look at them with mindfulness and with our wisdom. And then, the more we're able to do this, the more we'll be able to reduce that suffering in our lives. So I'd like to offer that to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this evening.